Today we're installing a high-performance onboard air system and Auxbeam switch panel, including an air compressor and automatic tire inflation system. I started by plasma cutting the bracket from steel, dialing in the shape to fit the available space under the hood. Once cut, the piece went into the press for a few precise bends to get the correct angles. I took my time here, double-checking each measurement before making the next bend. The goal was to keep everything square and aligned so the compressor would sit solidly without putting stress on the mounting points. After that, I drilled all the mounting holes, test fit everything in the engine bay, and made a few small adjustments. I checked the clearances around the wiring and hoses to make sure nothing would rub or vibrate once installed. Happy with the fit, I cleaned, painted, and prepped the bracket. Next up was mounting the air tank under the camper bench, keeping it protected and close to the rest of the air system. I measured and marked the spots, drilled the mounting holes, and test fit the tank to confirm clearances. With everything aligned, it was ready to be bolted in permanently. The next step was running the control wire from the engine bay into the cab. I carefully routed it along the passenger side, following the factory loom and using all existing grommets to keep the installation clean, protected, and free of sharp edges. Along the way, I made sure the wire wasn't pinched or stressed at any bends. Once inside the cab, the wiring comes up behind the dash and over to the driver's side, where I mounted the compressor switch in an intuitive spot within easy reach. I double-checked that everything was secure and aligned, aiming for a factory feel, simple, functional, and exactly where your hand naturally goes whenever you need to operate it. Finally, I carefully installed the switch into the dash, ensuring it fit snugly and clicked into place. With the wiring ready, it was time to install the bracket under the hood. The custom mount bolts directly into the engine bay using existing points, keeping everything solid without drilling. Once secured, I mounted the ARB compressor, torqued it down, and checked clearances around hoses, wiring, and the engine to prevent contact with moving parts or hot surfaces. I connected the long ARB air hose to the compressor and routed it down and under the truck. The hose will be connected to a custom air manifold. This setup keeps everything clean and makes the final plumbing straightforward once the rest of the system is in place. Before moving on to final assembly, I laid out and prepped all the plumbing components, including fittings, manifolds, valves, and everything needed for the air system. I double-checked thread types, sizes, and orientations to make sure everything would fit together without surprises. Taking the time here helps avoid leaks and unnecessary rework later. For the Auxbeam switch panel, I used the bracket that came in the kit, but it needed a few changes to work with my setup. I modified and welded it to get the fit and mounting angle just right. After a quick test fit, everything lined up cleanly and felt solid. Next, I routed the main air hose from the front of the truck back to the camper. It follows the frame for protection, staying clear of heat and suspension parts. I secured the hose at intervals, left enough slack for movement, and double-checked the routing to make sure nothing would rub or get pinched. Next step was drilling through the camper floor to bring the airline inside. I measured carefully, double-checked the location from underneath, and drilled slowly to make sure the hole stayed clean and clear of obstructions. From underneath the truck, I fed the hose up through the hole, keeping it clear of sharp edges and neatly positioned for the final connection. The line connects the manifold under the passenger door and the air tank mounted inside the camper. With everything tightened down and secured, the system finally came together. With the main system in place, I connected the hoses to the air tank and the pressure regulator. I measured each line carefully and cut the hoses to the correct length, making sure there was enough slack for movement, but not too much to create loops. Each fitting was tightened securely, and I double-checked that all connections were properly seated to prevent leaks. I mounted the regulator near the air tank for easy access, set the desired pressure, and tested the system to ensure it delivered consistent, accurate air wherever it's needed. Once the regulator was in place, I secured it to the vertical panel using rivets, making sure it was perfectly aligned. I checked that the regulator was firmly mounted with no movement and ensured there was enough clearance around the hoses and fittings so nothing would rub or interfere with operation. This keeps the regulator solid and reliable, even during rough road conditions. Next, I assembled the electrical switch panel that will eventually go under the hood. While it's separate from the compressor wiring, it shares a common 12-volt distribution point to keep power management neat and centralized. I checked each connection to make sure it was secure and organized. With the switch panel pre-assembled, I installed it under the hood on the driver's side. This panel acts as the central point to connect all the auxiliary circuits to the battery, keeping everything neat, centralized, and well organized. I secured the panel to the existing mounting points, carefully routed each wire, and double-checked that every connection was tight. By tying all circuits into a single distribution point, the system remains clean, organized, and much easier to service or expand in the future. Now it's time to bring the air outside the camper. I started by drilling a hole through the camper wall, carefully positioning it to avoid any structural components or wiring. From the pressure regulator, I routed the hose through the wall to the external air outlets, making sure the line stayed protected and clear of any sharp edges. I installed a valve and a gauge right at the outlet, giving quick, easy access and the ability to monitor pressure on the fly. I used quick disconnect double outlets at the end of each line. The final result is clean, efficient, and ready for action. With the system fully plumbed and all connections secure, it was time for a pressure test. I pressurized the lines, checked for leaks, and used the external outlets to inflate all the tires to a preset pressure. This setup allows me to inflate all the tires at once without having to move hoses around. To finalize the system, I prepared separate containers for the side manifolds and mounted them outside the camper. This keeps all the connections organized, protected, and easily accessible. With the manifolds in place, the air system is fully set up, tidy, functional, and ready to support everything from tire inflation to auxiliary air tools. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.